Swanns starting at 107. You see, Eulalie, after you die they will turn you into a man. Monsieur le Cure always has a joke for us. Gilbert's brother, Charles the Stammerer, was a pious prince, but having early in life lost his father, Pepin the Mad, who died as a result of his mental infirmity, he wielded with supreme power, with all the arrogance of a man who has no discipline in his youth, and if in a certain town he saw a man whose face he didn't like, he would massacre every last inhabitant. Gilbert, wishing to take revenge on Charles, caused the church of Cambrai to be burned down, the original church at the time, which Theodebert, when he and his court left the country house he had near here, at Thiberzy, which would be Theodebert, to go fight with the Burgundians, had promised to build over the tomb of Saint Hilaire if the Blessed One would grant him the victory. Nothing remains of it now but the crypt which Theodore must have taken you down into, for Gilbert burned the rest. Finally, he defeated the unfortunate Charles with the help of William the Conqueror. The Cure pronounced it Will, which is why so many English visitors come to see it. But he apparently was unable to win the affection of the people of Cambrai, for they rushed upon him as he was coming out of mass and cut off his head. Theodore has a little book he lends out to people that explains it all well. But what is unquestionably the most extraordinary thing about our church is the view from the belfry, which is magnificent, certainly in your case since you're not strong. I would never advise you to climb our 97 steps, exactly half the number of the celebrated dome in Milan. It's quite tiring for someone in good health, especially as you must go up bent double if you don't want to crack your head, and you collect all the cobwebs off the stairwell on your clothes. In any case, you would have to wrap yourself up quite snugly, he added, without noticing my aunt's indignation at the idea that she was capable of climbing into the belfry, because there's quite a breeze once you get to the top. Some people declare that they have felt the chill of death up there. Nonetheless, on Sundays there are always groups coming even from a long way off to admire the beauty of the panorama, and they go away enchanted. Now next Sunday, if the weather holds, you'll be sure to find some people there, since it's Rogation Day. It really must be admitted, though, that from that spot the scene is magical, with what you might call vistas over the plain that have quite a special charm of their own. On a clear day, you can see all the way to Verneuil. But the marvelous thing is that you can see, all in one glance, things you can't usually see except at a time separately, like the course of the Vivonne and the ditches of Saint-Assise-le-Cambrai, which are separated by a screen of tall trees, or the different canals of Jouy-le-Vicomte, Jadiosus Viscomitis, as you know. Each time I've gone to Jouy-le-Vicomte, of course, I've seen a bit of the canal, and then I've turned a corner and seen another bit. But by then I could no longer see the preceding bit. I could put them together in my mind, but that didn't have much of an effect for me. But from the Saint Hilaire belfry it is different. The whole area seems to have been caught in one great net, but you can't see any water. It's as though there were deep clefts dividing the town into different neighborhoods so neatly it looks like a brioche still holding together after it has been sliced. To do it right, you'd have to be in both places at the same time, in the steeple of Saint Hilaire and at Jouy-le-Vicomte. The Cure had so exhausted my aunt that he was scarcely gone before she had sent Eulalie away too. Here, my poor Eulalie, she said weakly, drawing a coin from a little purse that she had within reach of her hand. "This is so that you won't forget me in your prayers." "Oh, Madame Octave, I don't know if I should. You know I don't come here for that," Eulalie would say, with the same hesitation and awkwardness each time as if it were the first, and with an appearance of dissatisfaction that diverted my aunt but did not displease her, because if one day Eulalie looked a little vexed than usual as she took the coin, my aunt would say, "I don't know what was bothering Eulalie. I gave her the same as usual, and yet she didn't look happy." "I think she has nothing to complain about all the same," Francois would sigh, inclining to consider a small change anything my aunt gave her for her children or herself as a treasure madly squandered on an ingrate, the little coins placed in Eulalie's hand each Sunday, but so discreetly that Francois never managed to see them. It was not that Francois would have wanted for herself the money my aunt gave to Eulalie. She took sufficient pleasure in what my aunt possessed, knowing that the mistress's wealth both elevated and embellished her servant in everyone's eyes, and that she, Francois, was distinguished and renowned in Cambrai, Jouy-le-Vicomte, and other places on account of my aunt's many farms, the cure's frequent and extended visits, the singular number of bottles of Vichy water consumed. She was greedy only for my aunt. If it had been up to her to manage my aunt's fortune, which would have been her dream, she would have preserved it from the encroachments of others with a maternal ferocity. She would not, however, have seen any great harm in what my aunt, whom she knew to be incurably generous, allowed herself to give away, as long as it went to rich people. Perhaps she thought that they, having no need for gifts from my aunt, could not be suspected of showing fondness for her because of them. Besides, gift made to people of eminence and wealth, like Madame Césaret and Monsieur Swann, Monsieur Le Grandin, Madame Grippel, to persons of the same rank as my aunt, who were well suited, appeared to her to belong to the customs of the strange and brilliant life of the wealthy, who hunt, give balls, visit back and forth, people whom she admired and smiled upon. But it was not the same if the beneficiaries of my aunt's generosity were what Francois called people like me, people who are no better than me, the ones of whom she was most scornful, unless they called her Madame Francois, and considered themselves to be less than her. And when she saw that, despite her advice, my aunt did just as she pleased and threw her money away, as Francois saw it, at least, on the unworthy, she began to think the gifts my aunt made to her were quite small compared to the imaginary sum lavished on Eulalie. There was not a single farm in the vicinity of Cambrai so substantial that Francois did not suppose Eulalie could have bought it with all she earned from her visits. It is true that Eulalie formed the same estimate of the immense and hidden riches of Francois. It was Francois's habit, when Eulalie was gone, to make unkind predictions about her. She detested her, but she was also afraid of her and believed that when Eulalie was there she had to present a good face. She made up for it after Eulalie's departure, without ever naming her in fact, but proffering Sibylline oracles or pronouncements of a general character like those in Ecclesiastes, whose application could not escape my aunt. After watching through a corner of the curtain to see if Eulalie had closed the gate behind her, she would say, "Flatterers know how to make themselves welcome and collect a little pocket money, but have patience, the good Lord will punish them all in one fine day." With the sidelong glance and insinuation of Joas, thinking only of Athalie when he says, "The happiness of the wicked rushes down like a mountain stream, But when the cure had come, as well as his interminable visit had exhausted my aunt's strength, Francois would leave the bedroom behind Eulalie and say, "Madame Octave, I will let you rest. You look very tired." And my aunt would not even answer, breathing a sigh that must, it seemed, be the last, her eyes closed as though dead. But scarcely had Francois gone down than 4 peals dealt with the greatest violence would echo through the house, and my aunt, upright on her bed, would cry out, "Has Eulalie gone yet? Can you believe it? I forgot to ask her if Madame Grippil arrived at Mass before the elation. Quick, run after her." But Francois would return without having been able to catch up with Eulalie. "It's vexing," my aunt would say, shaking her head. The only important thing I had to ask her. In this way, life went on for my Aunt Leonie. Always the same, in the sweet uniformity of what she called, with affected disdain and deep tenderness, her little routine. Preserved by everyone, not only in the house, where we had all experienced the futility of advising her to adopt a better health regime and so had gradually resigned ourselves to respecting the routine, but even in the village where 3 streets away from us the goods packer, before nailing his crates, would send word to ask Francois if my aunt was resting. This routine was, however, disturbed once during the year, like a hidden fruit that had ripened without anyone's noticing and had dropped spontaneously. One night the kitchen maid gave birth. But her pains were intolerable, and since there was no midwife in Cambrai, Francois had to go off before daybreak to find one in Thiberzy. My aunt could not rest because of the kitchen maid's cries, and since Francois, despite the short distance, did not come back until very late, my aunt missed her very much. And so my mother said to me in the course of the morning, "Go up, why don't you, and see if your aunt needs anything." I went into the first room, and through the open door saw my aunt lying on her side sleeping. I heard her snoring lightly. I was going to go away quietly, but the noises I had made had probably interfered with her sleep and made it shift gears, as they said about cars, because the music of her snoring broke off for a second and resumed on a lower note. Then she woke up and half turned her face, which I could see now. It expressed a sort of terror. She had obviously just had a horrible dream. She could not see me the way she was positioned. And I stayed there, not knowing if I should go in to her or leave. But already she seemed to have returned to a sense of reality and had recognized the falsity of the visions that had frightened her. A smile of joy, of pious gratitude to God, who permits walking life to be less cruel than dreams, weakly illuminated her face, and in the habit she had formed of talking to herself half aloud when she thought she was alone, she murmured, "God be praised, our only worry is the kitchen maid who is having a baby. And here I have gone and dreamed that my poor Octave had come back to life and was trying to make me go for a walk every day." Her hand went out to her rosary, which lay on the little table, but sleep was overcoming her again and did not leave her the strength to reach it. She fell asleep, soothed, and I crept out of the room without her or anyone else ever finding out what I had heard. When I say that except for the very rare events like the confinement of my aunt's routine, like that confinement, my aunt's routine never suffered any variation. I am not speaking of those variations which, always the same and repeated at regular intervals, introduced into the heart of that uniformity only a sort of secondary uniformity. And so, for instance, every Saturday, because Francois went to the Rosenville pin market in the afternoon, lunch was, for everyone, an hour earlier. My aunt had so thoroughly acquired the habit of this weekly violation of her habits that she clung to it as much as the others. She was so well routined to it, as Francois said, that if she had to wait some Saturday to have lunch at the regular hour, this would have disturbed her as much as if on another day she had to move her lunch forward to the Saturday hour. What was more, this early lunch gave Saturday, for all of us, a special face, indulgent and almost kindly. At the time of day when one usually was another hour to live through before the relaxation of the meal, we knew that in a few seconds we would see the arrival of some precocious endives, a gratuitous omelette, an undeserved beefsteak. The return of this asymmetrical Saturday was one of those little events, internal, local, almost civic, which in peaceful lives and closed societies creates a sort of national bond, and becomes the favorite theme of conversation, jokes, stories wantonly exaggerated. It would have been the ready-made nucleus for a cycle of legends if one of us had an epic turn of mind. First thing in the morning, before we were dressed, for no particular reason, for the pleasure of feeling the strength of a comradeship, we would say to one another with good humor, warmth, and patriotism, "There is no time to lose. Don't forget, it's Saturday." While my aunt, conferring with Francois and remembering that the day would be longer than usual, would say, "You might make them a nice bit of veal, since it's Saturday." If at 10:30 one of us absent-mindedly drew out his watch and said, "Let's see, still an hour and a half before lunch," everyone was delighted to have to say to him, "Come now, what are you thinking? You're forgetting it's Saturday." We would still be laughing over it a quarter of an hour after, and we would promise ourselves to go up and report this lapse to my aunt to amuse her. Even the face of the sky seemed changed. After lunch, the sun, aware that it was Saturday, would linger an hour longer at the top of the sky, and when someone, thinking we were late for our walk, said, "Wait, it's only 2:00. Watching as they passed the 2 strokes from the St. Hilaire steeple, which do not usually encounter anyone on paths which are deserted because of the midday meal or the afternoon nap, alongside the lively white stream which even the fisherman has abandoned, and go on alone into the empty sky, where only a few lazy clouds remain, we would all answer him in chorus, "But you're wrong. We had lunch an hour early. You know very well it's Saturday." The surprise of a barbarian, this was what we called anyone who did not know what was special about Saturday, who, arriving at 11 o'clock to talk to my father, found us at the table, was one of the things in her life that most amused Francois. But if she found it funny that the dumbfounded visitor did not know we had lunch earlier on Saturday, she found it even more comical, while at the same time sympathizing from the bottom of her heart with his narrow chauvinism, that my father himself had not realized that the barbarian might not know this, and had not responded with no further explanation to his astonishment at seeing us already in the dining room. "Well, what do you expect? It's Saturday." Having reached this point in her story, she would wipe away a few tears of hilarity, and, to increase her own pleasure, would prolong the dialogue, invent what had been said in answer by the visitor, to whom this Saturday did not explain anything, and, quite far from complaining about her embellishments, we would feel they were not enough for us, and we would say, "But I think he also said something else. It was longer the first time you told it." Even my great aunt would put down her needlework, lift her head, and look over her glasses. What was also special about Saturday was that on this day, during the month of May, we would go out after dinner to attend the month of Mary. That is page 114. That's where I'm ending for today.